Hey y'all, I'm Ashley, a black woman and forever a black girl from the south side of Chicago. Growing up, the women in my family taught me the importance of creating my own space to cultivate joy and express my creativity. I found that space at the skating rink. The skating rink for me was a portal that transported me back from girlhood to the infinite possibilities of being a black woman and back again. I rolled through the sounds of black music while the bright lights illuminated my dark skin as the cool air brushed through my coily hair, giving me a sense of what freedom feels like. Just like the wheels of a roller skate, our lives take us on new journeys. And my journey has led me here to the Rolling Archives podcast, a digital scrapbook of Black girlhood, a celebration of the magic we are made of as we float through the ups and downs and journey through Black girlhood on our own terms. All right, y'all, I'm going to ask you again to roll with me for a moment. So, I'm going to take you back to my research project that is going to be a forthcoming book pretty soon. But I'm going to take you to a conversation that I had with Savannah. So, Savannah is a young Black girl who attended one of the middle schools that I was working at when I was doing my graduate school research. And she participated in the Black Girl Magic group that we created at her school. And so I wanted to get a sense of how the girls actually felt about the group to ensure that I was creating something that they also benefited from or that they had a say in what that space could be like. But I was taken aback by some of the things that she told me. And so, as we're talking, she started to thank me for creating Black Girl Magic at her school and how it really impacted her in her days. But then she ended that sentence by saying, "You made me just breathe." And so I'm also just always extremely taken aback that an 11-year-old Black girl was thanking me for making space for the most taken for granted action of breathing because she daily confronted this school as a place that felt so suffocating. And so I feel like I was building Black Girl Magic from this space of resistance because of my own experience as a young Black girl attending a predominantly white high school. So for the first time, I had all white peers. I never had any before I actually attended high school. And I experienced some of the most explicit and vile forms of racism daily for 4 years. I knew exactly what Savannah meant about finally having that space to breathe. Although I found that in the skating rink, I had only wished that I could have that space, just like we created for Savannah when I was a young Black girl in my actual school building, too. And so, Black Girl Magic was built from years of dealing with stress, anxiety, harm, self doubt, and self hatred, endless times of remembering being called the N word, just being ultimately seen as unworthy and unlovable in this world. And so I wanted something different for Black girls. And yet, sometimes when I entered that space, being Black Girl Magic, I would also be triggered, witnessing them experiencing the same things that I had so many years before them. And so instantly my guard was back up, the suffocation resurfaced, and yet we collectively created something that allowed them, as well as younger Ashley, to eventually just breathe. But what if we actually had a softer place to land from the start? And so let me ask you to think about this question as you listen today. What would a revolution that does not cost us our whole spirit, soul, and bodies look like? Who would Black women, and I'll add Black girls, get to be if we did not have to create from a place of resistance? These are questions from the book All the Black Girls Are Activists by our very special guest today. And so today I'm very, very honored and so excited to welcome a scholar, an award winning writer, and influencer, EbonyJanice. EbonyJanice Moore is a hip hop womanist, scholar-priestess, sovereignty mentor, and revolutionary dreamer. With a mind shaped by cultural anthropology and political science, and a heart anchored in spirit, love, and liberation, she writes, teaches, and dreams Black women free. Founder of Emma's Legacy and author of All the Black Girls Are Activists, Sacred Texts for Black Folks' Soul, and her forthcoming book, Real Soft Girl Shit, she blends ancestral wisdom, womanist theology, and cultural commentary with the audacity of a spoiled little bitty baby who knows she's worthy. Her work lives at the altar of justice, joy, softness, and fantastic Black futures. And I can honestly say I feel so grateful to be in this moment with you, Ebony Janice. I have found a level of permission to lean into my breath, to lean into my ability to pause and to really say no as a full sentence and mean it and not do so with guilt because it is okay for us as Black women and Black girls to be well and to understand how that eventually makes others well too. And so, hello, Ebony Janice. How are you feeling
Hello.
today?
Thank you for having me. I think I'm good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I think I'm doing good too. So I'm
Okay.
glad we came here on the same energy today.
Good.
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of deep dive in and just get a sense of young Ebony Janice. I feel like you have oftentimes talked about her in other conversations that I've heard. And I always invite our guests to just kind of bring their younger selves in and invite them. And so I'm interested in a core memory for you as a Black girl that stays with you or that keeps returning to you in the future.
It's funny because I definitely had some version of these questions in advance and I didn't study it. So the first thing that just came to my mind just now, because I didn't think about it earlier, um, the first thing that just came to my mind was when I was a little girl, I thought that I had superpowers. And, I remember, like, being in the car with, just whoever, with an adult, with some parent or, auntie or whatever, and when we would stop at the stoplight, I would, like, squint my eyes and, like, turn my head and turn the stoplight into, like, a laser beam. And so, like, the little squint would, like, of course, make the light bend, in your vision, and I would just, like, turn my head back and forth like, "This my laser beam," and it was so real to me, like, in my mind, I don't know what I was slicing up with my laser beam, I don't know what I was doing with my laser beam, but that is such a I feel like that's such a it's giving me kinda, like, the giggles a little bit to think about that because it is absolutely actual Ebony Janice personified, since I was a little girl, that there's something in my mind that was like, what could I do with this? What could I make out of this?" So, yeah, that's the thing that came to my mind with that question.
That's really beautiful. I love that you have, still have, but had this superpower that really kind of energized you too. I find that as young Black girls, like sometimes we can just get pulled away from seeing ourselves as ultimately so powerful. And I know that's something I struggle with as a young Black girl. So I actually really, really love that. I'm curious though, if you still are, do you still have your laser beam? Like,
I
are
do
you still?
sometimes, actually. I
Yeah.
actually do still sometimes have my laser beam, and I think that I hear you, kinda just reflecting some of your own, Black girlhood experiences and some of what you're saying, of course, really resonates with me as well because I'm a Black girl who grew up in a predominantly white town, in Northeast Ohio, and so I grew up mostly with white classmates, and so it's very interesting the experiences that I had that are very drastically different from what you're expressing about, I definitely experienced racism, I definitely experienced the heaviness, I definitely experienced, the microaggressions, but I simultaneously growing up in this predominantly white town, also grew up in a super Black community. From my church to the community organizations that were really kind of helping to shape who it is that we were becoming as young Black girls and as young people. And also, a father from Mississippi and a grandmother from Talladega, Alabama, and some of that super Southern Black muchiness was really, deposited into who it is that we were. And my pastor actually was just thinking about this or talking about this recently, having a black pastor growing up in a Southern Black missionary Baptist church that actually did have a missions arm. Because oftentimes you hear like churches call themselves missionary churches, but they've never been like on an actual missions experience. But my pastor had visited Africa like when I was a little girl, and that transformed him, and that transformed the way that we existed in that space. And so I say that in this moment with that question to say that there are these two opposing conversations happening in my life growing up. There's this violent radical whiteness that is centered, and also there's this other contrasting thought that was like, I'm black and I'm proud, black power, like the conversation around black is beautiful, and these ideas of I had a sister who was darker skinned, and so I grew up with my mom using language like, this my chocolate baby. This is my mom put like this extra emphasis on the way that she would talk about my darker skinned sister. This is the blacker the berry, the sweeter juice. We grew up with this kind of language, and it really hit me. It really resonated with me in a very particular way. I'm not saying that I grew up with a whole bunch of radical black young girls, everybody wasn't having the exact same experience with me or wasn't landing in the same way as them, because even my sisters have navigated their experience with blackness in a very unique way, very different from my own. But the way that it had always impacted and landed with me was that, yes, I am in this very violently white space, and also I'm black and I'm proud, and also, black is beautiful, and also, and also, and also. And so I definitely feel like now as an adult, looking back at little Ebony Janice, this, my identity, one of the questions that was asked in this kind of intake form was like, what is my relationship with blackness, black girlhood? And I just said I am, because I identify a part of my political location. In fact, I identify as black girl. So hence the reason the book, even though the book is written from like a scholarly position to start off with, to introduce womanism, the the book is called All the Black Girls Are Activists, because I'm talking about black girl. Like, I am 43 years old. When I am 63 years old, I still feel like I will still be identifying as a black girl, because my black girlhood has informed so much of who it is that I am and who I'm becoming.
Yes, thank you for that because another real big point of this podcast and this project that I've been working on is I don't ever want us to feel like we have to leave that black girl. I feel like we grow up and some folks might say like, "Oh, we're adultified, like we're forced out of
Uh-huh.
childhood." And then once we become adults, sometimes we become, we face this like infantilization, but also like we're like, "Okay, that was the past. It's time for me to grow up. It's time for me to move on." But I find that to be so powerful that you're like, "No, I'm 43. I'm still black girl. No, I'll be 66 and I'll still be black girl." So it's just like a never letting go of who you are choosing and deciding to be, but also holding on to Ebony Janice. And I also resonate so much with like having to navigate that two-ness of an experience where it's like, okay, this violent whiteness is happening daily, and then I'm coming home daily to this community. And for me specifically, it was just a community of Black women that always told me I was beautiful and like
Mhm.
uplifted me and told me I was smart. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, what is like the truth? Like, what is real? And then other places like the skating rink with Black folks, like it was just like love. And so I deeply appreciate that you also are reminding us that we can't forget about that community that actually did tell us that stuck. Like, there is some part of who I am that is most important to exist and valuable and lovable, right? And I think maybe that's a connection to why we're still holding on to that younger version of ourselves too. Um, but yeah, for some reason, I guess for me, my most immediate memories always go back to the violence
Mhm.
sometimes. And I guess it's because 'cause I've just been on this long healing journey, and so I'm curious, whether you had to kinda decipher, like, how did you decipher, especially when you think about your younger self, how you would describe Ebony Janice, like, how did you, like, kinda come to understand her as you're navigating these 2 different spaces?
I think I ooh, I have theories. Okay, remind me of the is the audience young or is the audience old?
We are a bit of everywhere,
Okay.
a
So
lot of academics too,
okay,
but
okay.
yeah.
So, in my introduction, you introduced me as a scholar-priestess, and so I wanna just kinda contextualize who it is that I am so that as I start to talk, it will kinda make sense why I talk like this. I have been teaching Sunday school. I grew up in a Southern Black Christian experience. I've been teaching Sunday school since I was 6 years old. I've been preaching from the pulpit since I was 8 years old, and so I have been an ordained Baptist minister pretty much the majority of my life. I had a theological shift from Christianity after a missions trip, in my late 20s, and, so I don't identify with as a Christian anymore. Jesus is still a thing for me, but I don't identify as a Christian anymore. I am an initiated, Ifa and Orisha priestess, and Ifa is a West African spiritual tradition, and so that matters to know because I be talking from scripture very often because the Bible is still one of my sacred texts, but also I'm going to talk about some concepts of God that I think when I'm talking to Black women in a Christocentric society, I understand that that can feel some of the way that I understand myself can feel a little uncomfortable because of the way that we are socialized inside of Christianity. So that feels important to note, first of all. Having said that, what I believe is that in this lifetime, and I don't know that I have a fully enfleshed theory around reincarnation, so I wouldn't call it that. But as in this lifetime, as this Ebony Janice in this body, in this form, I came with a certain set of understandings about myself. And I'm clear about that because of who little Ebony Janice was. It is obvious to me that when I look at me and my sisters who for example, me and my sisters as the example, we grew up in the same household, same parents, went to the same elementary school, middle school, high school, has so many of the same experiences and we couldn't be more different than the color purple, green, and yellow. And so one of my degrees in cultural anthropology, as someone thinking about socialization and becoming and how culture and different experiences impact who it is that we are in humanity, I've looked at what is the unique thing then about Ebony Janice that caused me to be this kind of little revolutionary because I don't have a time frame where a white person could ever call me the N word, and that was the end of the story. Ever,
Yeah.
ever. We got a problem from a young age. Get a little violent, in fact, that I had to put my hands on somebody at age 10 because she decided that she it was like I remember it so clearly. One of my childhood friends, I feel like she maybe had just heard it for the first time and thought she was gonna try it out on me. Bad idea. Bad idea. Melissa whoops her. And so there is so I contextualize, this lifetime because because perhaps my sisters wouldn't have had the same response where they enter in this time frame. Perhaps you wouldn't have had the same response where you enter in this lifetime, right? And so I understand myself as having come into this body in this lifetime in this form with a certain knowing about myself as a Black girl, as a Black woman, as someone becoming in this Black, femme experience that there is an maybe an unspoken set of rules or an unspoken information that I just had that was not going down. And so I have very conscious memories even as a young girl of of noting the difference between what my body could do versus what my white friends' bodies could do, that our bodies were doing something different. I had a conscious knowing that there was even sometimes a difference being made with my classmates versus the difference being made with me. I tell this silly story very often of getting my name put on the board in kindergarten. Again, a very conscious core memory of mine because I told this white boy named Brandon. why do I remember this? Kindergarten. I told this boy named Brandon that he had eye boogers. And I got my name put on the board because he started crying and said she said I had boogers in my eyes. And when I tell you that I went home and told my mom we're gonna have to go up to that school and get this reversed because I didn't have this language, but I understood that culturally we were just different. And the teacher was not accepting that there was a cultural language barrier happening that telling him he had eye boogers was actually me helping him. It was not me insulting him. But because she had no context of this language, of this vernacular, she was siding with him instead of understanding me as a young Black girl with a whole speaking a whole different language that wasn't for the purpose of insulting, but it's just the casual way that we talked about, oh, you got sleep in your eyes, right? And so being that I have these kinds of memories and this kind of knowing is what affirms for me that there must have been some information that I came into this lifetime with, that I came into this body with, that I came into this timeline with, that is for both for the purpose of my own cultivation and the path that I was going to be on, and also was informing me even as a young girl of this is the work that my soul is leading me towards, that I'm very likely going to be doing some work around Blackness, around liberation, around freedom, around empowerment. Of course, I didn't have that language at that young age, but when I kind of think back on like how did I arrive in this work, in this time, in this reality, that information was always always sitting right there. Little Ebony Janice actually wear me out sometimes when I think about her.
I absolutely love that. Wait, so I'm curious because you talked about something really important here around like cultural background, cultural language for your younger self. Like once you kind of realize, like, oh, they just don't know what I'm talking about, but
Mhm.
I'm actually helping you out.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? But did you feel like then, oh, I have to shift or change? Or was Ebony just Janice just like, this ain't right, take my name off the board,
that's
and
it.
then we
In
gonna
the
keep it
sentence,
going?
this is not right.
Mhm,
Take my name off that board,
mhm.
and I'm mad at you now because why aren't you trying to understand me? And it never felt like it never felt like my problem, honestly. It never felt like, "Oh, I am doing something wrong." It always felt like their problem. This another example of like my knowing, my which is kind of the reason why I lean into like there is something spiritual that's deposited into me into this lifetime to know this because I also have never code switched in my life. Please put it on my tombstone. To the point that I remember hearing my mom with her telephone voice. We know what it I actually call it the Bob voice, but my mom with her telephone voice has always been like nails on a chalkboard to me because I never understood it. Why are you talking like that? I could not in my little girl mind understand why some of the adults around me would change their voice around white people. And so I may have even kind of developed or cultivated this deepening into my Blackness as a result of that because I wasn't like shucking and I wasn't jiving it up. I wasn't like, 6 years old talking about you jive turkey, but I absolutely was like conscious of what am I doing right now? What is my body doing right now? Am I apologizing for this? Am I, and so I definitely felt like this is not my problem. This is this teacher's problem. And I remember being mad at her that she wasn't listening to me, which is why I had to go get my mom on the duty. And the last thing you want to do is get Cassandra up here at this school.
Period. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So much of that just, like, really resonates. One, the not code switching, I wanna pause because I feel like that's an affirmation, so I wanna make
Mhm.
sure, like, folks really hear that and hold on to that. Because I was like, "Oh, this is an affirmation for the younger girls that might be listening in," but actually it's for all of us
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
I still feel like I hear myself or other adults be like, "Oh, well, when I'm in this space or if I'm going for this thing, this interview, right, like, I gotta talk a certain way, look a certain way, but
Yeah.
like, no, maybe that's just not the space for us, and I think being
Yes.
affirmed in that, like, holding on to that, rather than a constant stripping ourselves away, I find that so powerful,
What
and
you just said, before you move
yeah,
on, what you just said, I think is the major key.
mm,
Maybe that's just not the space for us.
mhm,
Any space where you cannot be actual you is a danger.
mhm,
Deal with that. Because especially for the corporate girlies and for somebody in academia, very often what we're kinda taught, and even our elders can kind of, like, lean into this a little bit, just because of their own lived experience. They have believed that and did such powerful work, I think, for us to be able to stand on their shoulders and have a different experience, and so I want us to have that experience. I want us to have the experience that they worked hard for us to have, and not to just keep doing the same things that they may have had to do. Hey, guys, we's free now. I'm not playing with you. This is information. Any place where you cannot be actual you, Spirit is giving you information that this is not going to get you to the highest version of yourself. So if sounding like myself, looking like myself, being myself is a problem in this space or is holding or hold me back, the former information that means that I should water this down is not something that I should lean into. It's information that I should lean in the opposite direction of. And I said that standing on their shoulders. I'm standing on the shoulders of elders and ancestors who did for the safety of their life have to maybe change their hair or water things down or code switch. Now here we are several generations from that. Standing, if I'm standing on their shoulders, that means that I can see something up here on their shoulders that they have lifted me up with the ability to see. And what I see is actual me is the major key. Bars.
Yeah. And I feel like that standing on their shoulders is so tied to that knowing that you had as young Ebony Janice, right? Like, because of them, like, you were able to be
Yeah.
brought into this time already knowing that there is nothing wrong with me,
Yes.
right? And so, yeah, I love that. I really love that. Thank you for that. So something else that you mentioned earlier was that young Ebony Janice had all this knowing, had this experience, navigated this two-ness, and then later on, though, which maybe you didn't know at the time, would turn into you becoming this writer,
Mhm.
and this writer of like Black women and girls' stories, their lives. And so I'm just curious if you could just tell us a little bit more about that journey as you were growing, perhaps in age, but like what stayed with you that allowed you to become the Ebony Janice that we know and love today.
We know and love me. Thank you.
You.
Um, I I have actually always been a writer as well. I wanted to be a rapper though.
Mm.
I still feel like I got this rap career in me somewhere. I do not. Um, but I say that in this moment because there's this culture, um, I call myself a hip hop womanist, and womanism is a term that Alice Walker introduced formally in her book, 1983 book, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. And it is a term that has a four-part definition. It's kind of written in prose, like kind of poetic. Um, but the fourth part of the definition says womanism is to feminism as purple is to lavender. And so my understanding of that is this is Alice Walker's way of saying that womanism as a naming is Black women's deeper feminist work. Is black is it's the as purple is to lavender is Black women's deeper shade of purple, Black women's deeper feminist work. And the reason why I believe she's talking about it being deeper is because a part of this prose definition is also like loves spirit, loves roundness, loves the moon. Part of the definition says loves men sometimes sexually, sometimes not sexually, loves women sometimes sexually, sometimes not sexually. Um, a womanish, similar to grownish, willful, knowing maybe too much, right? And so she's brought in Black girlhood into this definition. She's brought in, like an intersectionality inherently exists in this definition. She's brought in spirit in this definition in a way that feminism, but particularly Black feminism, hadn't necessarily been leaning into this kind of spiritual element of it. And so I identify as a womanist. I came to womanism through a theological direction, that there were these Black womanist theologians, Dr. Renita Weems, who's the first. Black woman to ever receive a PhD in Old Testament studies. Dr. Renita Weems happened to be preaching at this church that I used to go to in Decatur, Georgia years ago. And I heard her preaching about Hagar in a way that I had never heard Hagar preached. Hagar was just, you know, s this concubine, basically, this, person who gave birth to, uh, to a son for Abraham, and, but she's really fleshing out Hagar as an African woman who actually also happens to be the first person in the entire Bible to name God, because God has many names, but the first person to have an encounter in the wilderness in this particular story, had this encounter with God and then name God in that moment. And that was so profound to me. I was like, wait a minute, like this. I'm in my late 20s, my mid to late 20s at this point. I've been born and raised in the church, and nobody's how many times have I heard the story of, Abraham, Isaac? How many times have I heard the story of, Sarah and Abraham and, Hagar, and nobody has ever fleshed out who Hagar is. Nobody's ever really paid attention in my own preachment to who Hagar is and how important and pivotal and necessary Hagar is to this story. And also that Hagar didn't have agency over her own body. So there also is something else violent happening to Hagar in this story, where to a certain extent she's almost villainized when she runs away to the wilderness. So I'm like, whatever that is, I am that, when I started to study, womanist theology. And so this is when really the naming for me is like what womanist theologians were ultimately saying is who womanist theologians, also, they got that language from womanism from Alice Walker, who wasn't necessarily thinking about Christianity or theology in this way, but they took on that name, womanist theologians, because they wanted to talk about Black women's particular relationship with this text, with this sacred text. They wanted to talk about God's specific relationship with Black women, and how God could not have forgotten us, right? The way that we have been preached to historically, it seems like God forgot Black girls.
Hmm.
It seems like God forgot about Black women. And then here come these womanist theologians really dealing with this sacred text, saying, no, there's no way that God forgot us. There's no way that we can talk about, this story of Tamar and not really say this violent thing happened to Tamar, because Tamar is never centered in this story. It is, after the brother has to kill the brother for this violent thing that happens to Tamar, it's her father and her brother's grief for what happened, not about what happened to her. And so centering Tamar or centering Hagar, or thinking about this text and seeing Black women's lived experience in it. So that's the direction that I come to womanist. But I call myself a hip hop womanist,
Yeah.
because at which point I am understanding myself as a theologian, as a trained theologian, and also, knowing that Black women's issues and the divine is what is most important to me. That I was simultaneously raised in the church and by hip hop. So I started having some questions about the ethical implications of excluding hip hop from this conversation about what is sacred and what is holy, and what is speaking to my own Black girl experience, because I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and so the music, the hip hop in the 80s and the 90s was literally becoming a phenomenon at the time, and we loved it, and also it was harmful in a lot of ways to us, but it was informing the language, it was informing our bodies, it was informing how we saw ourselves. It was the first time that we were thinking about not being skinny, because in hip hop, a big butt was a good thing. And so hip hop was so important to me, this language is so important to me. Understanding these lyrics and what was happening across the globe with Black people was so important to me. Bringing all that, back to this moment, ultimately, what being identifying as a hip hop womanist, even before I had that language at such a young age, really did for me was it gave me language. I had language. I had the Bible, and I had hip hop lyrics, and I had the ability to understand people and myself in a way that living in Sandusky, Ohio, in this little small, predominantly white space that wasn't giving me the larger picture of Blackness across the globe, hip hop could give me that. And then also this kind of a womanist approach to understanding myself as the divine also could give me that. And so I wasn't really ever in a position because of this, because of the way that my mind was working around these two kind of languages or these two sacred texts, I would say, I wasn't ever able to not understand myself contextually as Black and as a part of something that was larger than just this place that I was from. And because of that, it is adding to little Ebony Janice and this kind of inherent knowing. Now I got a little bit of language. Now I got a little bit of, like a little bit more understanding. And the last thing I'll say about that also is like I also feel like I grew up in the era of the best Black television shows. Which
Mm.
also, was very transformative for my identity because there's an episode of the different world that came out when I was a preteen where Kimberly Reese is like frustrated with the fact that Whitley Gilbert, who is this Kimberly Reese is this heavier set, dark-skinned Black woman, and Whitley Gilbert is this almost biracial looking, light-skinned, black, skinny Black girl. And Whitley is putting on this presentation for Dorothy Height Hall that's going to be this dedication and in this particular episode. And she has all these different pictures. It's like, Angela Davis and, all these profound Black women, Dorothy Height, all these profound Black women. And then this mammy figure, picture drops out of the ceiling. And Kimberly Reese is like, no, absolutely not. And she really is rejecting this picture of Mammy. And so the episode really is talking a lot about Kimberly's own experience in this dark skin as a Black woman who was full figured and full bodied, and what it meant for her to think that she was playing this character as a little girl dressed up for Halloween as an African queen, and somebody called her, Aunt Jemima, called her, Mammy, right? And that how that scarred her as a young girl. Where here I am as a young girl in this predominantly white space, in this Black body with these thick thighs that's doing something different underneath the desk than my right. I can't cross my legs under the desk, but my classmates, these skinny white girls can. So I've been noticing these things. Here comes this episode of Different World. And the way that the episode ends, which I get emotional still to this day when I watch this episode, the way this episode ends is Kimberly Reese has this conversation with Mr. Gaines, who is the cook in the cafeteria at the school. And Mr. Gaines really encourages her to see how beautiful, all of Blackness is, all the different shades of Blackness is. And so they put on this performance where it starts off with Freddie dancing to a portion from Intezake Shangus for Color Girls. Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah. Someone's in the kitchen. I know on Yowza, Yowza, Yowza. Y'all don't know nothing about birthing no babies. And then it goes on to Jada Pinkett Smith's character comes from out underneath this huge skirt that Kimberly Reese is wearing. This kind of like mammy, character that Kimberly Reese is standing on stage as. And Jada Pinkett Smith comes from underneath this skirt and she starts dancing to like this tribal music, and the skirt opens up and you see like these Black African women characters on the inside of the skirt opens up into a backdrop, and then Kimberly Reese performs Ego Trippin' by Nikki Giovanni. All these words. This is my childhood. This is my like imprinted into my mind as a little girl. I am so fly, even my errors are correct. I'm a little girl seeing beautiful Black women on TV, processing the grief of Blackness and the beauty of Blackness in a 30-minute episode. And so it almost was kind of impossible that combined with the spiritual knowing that I believe I came into this world with, it was almost impossible that anybody was gonna ever get me to kind of water myself down. I'm in the third grade hearing Nikki Giovanni's poem Ego Trippin' and feeling emotional about it because that's not necessarily what my environment is showing me. But my knowing is showing me that. And so I had language, and this language is profoundly transformative to how I get to navigate the world, even as a little girl with such certainty. Because with that language, which but I started off talking about hip hop and wanting to be a rapper, with this language, whether it was lyrics or whether it was, Queen Latifah, UNITY, whatever it was, there is all this language that is countering whatever this kind of violent white experience was. And something in my soul just always decided to lean towards that's more true than whatever this experience is telling me. And
Mm.
I do feel I want to acknowledge the privilege of that in this timeline. And also, that is why the work that I do in the world is around trying to support Black women and girls into understanding like this is the actual truth. Everything else is just a witness to somebody else's story. It does not have to be our witness.
Something that you said was like, this is the actual truth, right? That is tied to the knowing and that the language came into play. And so for me, when I was in graduate school, this is when I started to get my first introduction to like Black feminism and womanism, right? And I remember distinctly being in my first grad class, reading Angela Davis's Women, Race, and Class, and like crying, then going
Mhm,
to class and processing and crying in front of all of these new peers that I still don't even really know, my professor, and then like still leaving class and still crying. I was like, it was a cry that was like, oh my gosh, like this is sad to read about enslaved women, but it was also a liberating cry because it was like, I knew this, like it wasn't me, like I wasn't inherently the problem, right? But I
mhm,
didn't have the language to really
mhm,
understand and to like really describe what was happening. And so I really connect with like all the ways that perhaps womanism or even just being immersed in hip hop,
mhm,
and seeing like that 90s Black TV era, right? Like we were constantly inundated with the images, right? That were
mhm.
kind of affirming a lot of what we may have known as young girls at the time. But then it starts to make sense when we get that language. And so I think to reaffirm and kind of go back again that like we already know,
Mhm.
and not to dismiss that knowing, not to dismiss like who we are, and the experiences that we have had. Um, I will say that I also have witnessed Renita Weems. I used to go to Trinity United Church of
Okay.
Christ, with, Doctor, I'm so sorry, Otis Moss is the pastor. It's
Mhm.
like very Black liberation theology, and so she actually came and preached one day, and I was blown away, like,
Yeah.
blown away. But one thing that you did mention was how, Black women have always been here, right? Like whether it's in the stories with Hagar or it's in the stories of hip hop. And so it's important for us to ensure that they aren't invisibilized, right? And so I feel that as a writer, you are continuing to keep us, right? And hold us and stay with us because as you said, God didn't forget us. So
Mhm.
Ebony Janice not finna forget us. Ashley not finna forget
I
us, right?
see.
So I really love that. I did want to dive
Mhm.
into your new book, because this is so exciting for me. Not only are you remembering to bring our stories with us, but you're kind of asking us to take a beat, right? Like real soft girl shit.
Mhm.
And I've heard you talk about how um specifically softness has gotten taken up, misappropriated, and taken away from the ways that you understand softness and how softness can be for Black women and girls and femme folks, right? Like, yes, it could be the luxury and the name brands and going to the resort and the nails and the hair, da 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 da. Da. But you are actually calling us to something else that I think is so, so important. So I just wanted to sit with that as well and ask you to just talk about softness and what does it look like to embrace softness for Black women and girls?
Yeah, I always love it when people ask me to talk about softness because, um, keep in mind, I was simultaneously raised by hip hop, and I have held on to the naming of hip hop as important and necessary to me, even in my own critiques of it, um, and the harm that it has caused to Black women and femme folk. Um, but because hip hop is as a tool for becoming has been very profound for me. And hip hop is the first and maybe only place that I think Black women have permission to be a little braggadocious. There isn't a lot of other. jobs that you can have or places that you can exist where you can walk in the room and say, "I'm her," and everybody shut the F up, right? But hip hop gives Black women that space to like really brag. And so I love that about hip hop. And so even as a scholar, it is something that I have given myself permission to enter into spaces and say, actually, you're welcome. Because I introduced the language of softness. I was the first person to there were two conversations happening in Twitter at one time, separate from each other. Nigerian Twitter, just to give folk a little bit of background on where luxury soft girl conversation came from. A Black woman, or you gotta say Black, a Nigerian woman, um, who was living in like the lap of luxury in like this condo, like high rise in Lagos, tweeted one day about her soft life, and it was really critiqued a lot at the time. She was heavily critiqued, even by a lot of by a lot of Nigerian people because they're like, "Girl, we are in peril. What are you talking about right now? We don't we have rolling electricity sometimes, and you over here talking about this soft life." But what she was saying is she was talking about how whatever her lived experience was had brought her to this place where, she wanted to have access to luxury and she wanted to have a beautiful experience and she wanted to really demonstrate what it looked like to be having this soft life. Around the same time, I was living in Harlem, which is one of my favorite places on the planet. I love Harlem, New York. I get to be somebody in Harlem as a Black girl that I am not anywhere else in the world. Like, I'm really popping in Harlem. It's a real thing. And I had always known that even before I moved to Harlem, I had felt drawn to Harlem. It's such a major and part of my becoming story. So I'm living in Harlem several years ago, and while it was beautiful, it also was the best of times, the worst of times. So it's not a joke when they say if you can make it in New York City, you can make it anywhere because New York really is a concrete jungle. That's not that I mean, it is a metaphor, but it's not. It's hard, it's brick, it's concrete, it's not a lot of trees, it's not a lot of nature. It's not, you gotta go find nature in New York. And on top of that, it's also a lot of bright lights. And it's also a lot of if you s the smell is not just the smell, it is the smell, right? It's a very overwhelming so all of your senses are being, attacked to a certain extent at one time. Prior to living in New York, I had only ever lived in really, nature-surrounded spaces. I grew up on the bay, in Sandusky, Ohio. I grew up right there on Lake Erie. That's not a metaphor for something. My grandmother's backyard was the bay. I had lived in Alabama, I had lived in Georgia, I had lived in, Northern California, Southern California, so I've only been where there is nature 27 seconds away at the most. So New York, where I had to I couldn't just go out the door and my dog could I had to go find somewhere for my dog to pee. New York was hard for me. And
Mhm.
so also, this is like 2018, 2019, when in New York, there also was a lot of violent policing happening where the police would be standing on street corners with machine guns. It's such a odd time, and so there's this time frame where like every other day you were seeing a new video go viral of the police in the metro station, with their machine guns to like putting people's face on the ground to arrest them on the dirty New York City ground to arrest them over $2.75 fare, right? And so it was a really hard time at the same time that I was in this very beautiful experience. And a lot of other experience that I had to talk about this in the chapter In Pursuit of Softness in my book, All the Black Girls Are Activists. I talk a little bit about it. But so while all of this is happening, I was thinking, this is hard. I just want something soft. And when I was thinking about softness, I was thinking about a regulating nervous system. I was thinking about the fact that there is nothing I can do about the dirt bike gang that is going up and down the street all day long today. I cannot go outside. I mean, I could become a Karen, right? But even if I did, they were here longer than me. There's nothing that Ebony Janice can do short of witchcraft.
Okay.
that can make this dirt bike shut up today. And so I had this revelation that I was gonna have to figure out how to be doing this softness work. And so I started publicly talking about what softness meant to me as a Black woman and, tweeting about it in, I thought I was still on Tumblr even at the time, sharing it in these different spaces about what softness meant to me and how I wanted to access softness. And I had been kind of, even before this time, publicly using the language of softness, but I had never fully fleshed it out and begun to define it. So then I defined it, and I introduced this language in it, and it started to become kind of this conflated conversation where, because the girls were talking about a soft life, they were conflating that with this thing that I was talking about when I was talking about softness as a nervous system regulating tool. But the more that I really started to cultivate and develop this language, the more I realized that it really was a radical tool for Black women to be able to access, that it felt important to me that Black women be able to really access softness. I want Black women to have a soft life too. I'm gonna keep it real with you. I'm not mad at the idea of a soft life. It's not, but it cannot, excuse me, it cannot be the sole, or even the central theme or defining that we look to, because it's not accessible to all of us. But softness as the work of getting into our seated self. And when I say the seated self, I mean right now, take a deep breath in and fill your lungs. Exhale and release. That's your seat. That's your soft seat. I wanted Black women to be able to imagine, who would you get to be if you created your world from that place right there, which is a very different place from that sitting up armored, you know, gonna figure it out place. It's a very different place. And then I wanted us to imagine what who we would get to be, what we would get to create, what we would get to imagine, what we would get to dream, what else is accessible to us, even in our liberation, our pursuit of, freedom and actual liberation and sovereignty. And so more of these kinds of questions started to come up for me around dreaming, as radical resistance, around, really rest, really being in our ease, being in our pleasure. All these things started to form out of this conversation around, like, ooh, there is somebody that I get to be and imagine myself as from here versus from here. And here's the thing. And you started off this conversation talking about the baby who said, "You help me to breathe." That's free.
Mhm,
So contrast to the soft life conversation, which might cost you something, is free. So this is accessible to all of us. What has to happen is we have to have the language for it in order for us to be able to even start walking in that direction. So, yeah, when I talk about softness, I'm really talking about this spaciousness, this the thing that we do to create that spaciousness, because a breath gives you space. When you fill your lungs, you open up something in the body. You open up something in the mind. You open up something in the spirit. You open up something for yourself that was not possible before that. I wanted softness to always equal a seated to a self. I wanted softness to always be connected to a regulating nervous system. I wanted softness to always be about the spaciousness that we create for ourselves that nobody could take from us. No matter where you are, nobody could take that from, that kind of soft reality from you.
mhm. I love that. So, just doing that breath work just now, just I was like, "Oh, I'm in my seat." Like, I'm grounded, because 'cause I'm, like, recording. I'm like, "What's next? What's happening?" I'm following along with everything you're saying, so and I feel like I'm always in a very, like, tight space.
Yes. Uh-huh.
My shoulders are always beyond my ears. It made me think about when I meditate, like, I didn't realize how much I'm, like, so clenched all the time until
Yeah.
I do meditation and they're like, "Where's the tension? Where's the tension?
Yeah.
Release it." And I'm like, "Oh, it's in my teeth.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's in my legs." Like, my legs are literally crossed. "Oh, it's in my fingers because I
Uh-huh.
have, like, fists," and it's just like
All
once
day
you
long.
let all of that go, it's almost like uncomfortable in the sense of, like, I feel so vulnerable, like, sometimes when I meditate, I literally cry
Mhm.
because I'm like, I just feel like a release, and so I just wanna talk about, like, some of that vulnerability too, especially in this moment, like, we are in 2026. This world just feels like a lot sometimes. Every day we're just inundated with so much information that can be shocking from the 30 minutes that you was just scrolling to now we're in a crisis, right? And so sometimes it feels like that release, that inhale, exhale feels great and I don't have time for that, or maybe it just don't feel like real. And I love that you're taking us to a place of like, actually, that release allows us to dream. That
Yeah.
release allows us to let go. That release allows us to be well. But what would you say for folks that just feels like, I have to be so guarded to protect myself in the moments that we are living in, right? Like, what would you say for Black women and girls about that exhale, release the vulnerability that comes, all of that.
You don't have time not for it.
Mm,
Black women are experiencing chronic illness as a result of stress at a higher rate than any other group of people. You don't have time not to take the breath.
mm,
That's a fact. It's not my opinion. It's not even woo-woo. I'm about to be woo in a second, but this ain't even woo-woo.
mm.
Studies have shown that Black women are experiencing chronic illness as a result of stress at a higher rate than any other group of people. Because, as Nanny said in Zora Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God, the nigger woman is the mule of the world. If you the mule of the world, it means people been just throwing stuff on your back for generations, and you just gotta carry it. And we wanna talk about freedom, sovereignty, like returning to ourselves, being our actual selves, or even like for the really, I'm a Capricorn sun, and so I wanna say that
Oh.
because I I'm not saying this, Capricorns, we really wanna win.
Oh, I know I am a Capricorn,
Okay.
so
And
yeah,
we don't just wanna win, we wanna win everything.
all of it and some more.
Even healing. I wanna win therapy. I wanna win everything. And as a result, Capricorns love a strategy, step 1, step 2, step 3. So I'm giving this information to contextualize that my natural disposition is very step 1, step 2, step 3, and then Imma do like this, and then Imma build a curriculum. And that's not a metaphor for something. I be about it, and I've been about it. Think about little EbonyJanice with her little self. I have a plan for this. I know what I'll do. Me and my little laser beams. I know what I'll do. Girl, go take a nap. And so this feels important to note so that you don't think that who you're talking to or who you're hearing from is somebody who has just always been like, da da da. That's not the case at all. I have had to do so much deep excavation work to understand that there is no reality in which I create the most successful experience in this lifetime by doing too much. There is no reality in which I actually, because that's very white, um, it's very patriarchal, it's very masculine. It's very like, "Imma do like this, like this, like this." You know? It is not, and so even if I succeed, I only succeed to the extent the cap is at white man. So I could thrive. I could succeed at white man and still not show up as the fullness of my capacity because if white man is the ceiling is on the floor compared to my actual capacity. But because we're socialized into the ceiling on the floor, we never do the work to process that there is something greater possible. You can't access the greater possible doing what white men do. The game is rigged for you to not succeed as the highest possible version of yourself, doing what white men do, you can never win. Ever, ever. Let me say ever one more time. There's no way that you could ever win doing what white men do because the literal rules to the game is to prevent you from even if you think you so-called access, Jay-Z has a, who isn't the best example because he certainly is a black capitalist, but Jay-Z has a song, OJ, the story of OJ. I don't think that's the actual title, but there's a line in this is like, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." Okay,
Mm,
right? And so it's understanding that even as the most successful in whatever field you are in, you still cannot, doing what white men do, crack the ceiling at all. So, that means that because let's go back to what we said earlier, from this womanist perspective, God couldn't have forgotten us, though. The setup can't be then that we always gotta be subordinate to white men. Yuck!
yes.
That can't be God's will for our life. That means that there must be some information, some tools, something that we need to access that will support us in our journey towards being able to become our actual selves and get off this pursuit of the ceiling, which is actually on the floor. And when I say the ceiling is on the floor, I mean that as a standard is so low compared to your actual capacity. Nipsey Hussle said, "No, he a genius. He just can't claim it because they left him no platform to explain it." It's that. That's what that ceiling does to us. We have actual genius level capacity, and we can never tap into it because we always trying to get to the ceiling. The ceiling's on the floor. You're living beneath your actual capacity, trying to, "Imma do like this." That's why this whole conversation with that lady, the mixed girl from Britain with the book coming out, Emma something,
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
it's
Emma.
currently, like, at the time of the recording, her book is kinda going viral because she says something about Black women needing to understand that working from home is not going to make us thrive, and I can intellect what she's trying to say, and simultaneously, she's married to a white billionaire. Let's keep it real, Emma. She's also not a Black American woman. Let's keep it real, Emma. The ceiling's on the floor, Emma. You're trying to get us to live up to this standard that is on the floor. Okay. So, to conclude this little woo woo moment that I'm going into, because I'm going from you can't afford to not take that breath. The statistics show that it's harmful to our bodies, our whole spirit, soul, and body. But additionally, the reason why you have to take that moment is because there's such profound information in your seated self. I'll give a very quick example. Years ago, I had this idea to do this bodysuit. I had this bodysuit that I wanted to sell, and the bodysuit just said, "What would Erica Badu?" do?" And so I made this little fake mock-up of it. I went to Walmart and got some letters and painted them onto the bodysuit, and I was doing pre-sales. But I had maybe like 8 pre-orders. And so one day I decided I'm gonna start tagging Erica Badu in it, because that she'll post it, she'll share it. This is years ago. She'll post it, she'll share it, and then it'll go viral, and I will have all these pre-orders. It worked. Erica Badu posts the thing. It goes viral. I wake up to hundreds of orders. And I'm like, "Oh god, now I have to actually do this. This thing doesn't really exist." And it's just me. It's just the Ebony Janice show doing these bodysuits. So, I order my design, I order my bodysuits, and I go to work. I got my heat press, put the designs on the bodysuit, put the heat press down, the letters are peeling off. And I'm just like, "They're gonna say I'm a scammer. They're gonna like, what's gonna happen? What am I supposed to do?" I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing exactly what the, directions from the design, because I made the design, but I got the design made. And so it's like for the heat press machine. I've got it set to what it's supposed to be set to. I'm holding it down for as long as it's supposed to be held down. Why isn't it working? I decided to take a nap because that's always the best idea for me, which sounds weird, ridiculous. Like in this the ceiling is on the floor, like production, you can't take a nap. You got to keep doing something, figure it out. Then do like this, then da da da. So I take a nap, and while I'm coming out of the nap, I have this visualization of myself putting this bodysuit on the heat press, putting the design on the heat press. And I see myself pulling the heat press clamp down to press the design into the bodysuit. And I stopped. I didn't pull it down. I turned the heat up. And keep in mind, I have it set according to what this design says it's supposed to be set to. But I see myself turn the heat up. I press it. I wake up and I'm like, Eureka, I've got it. And I do it and it works.
Mhm.
And so all of these words to say, you think that go, 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 figure it out. I don't got time for that is the answer. And I'm here with evidence. My life is the evidence of that. I'm just coming out of this ain't a metaphor for something. This is really not a metaphor. I'm just coming out of 3 years of laying in the bed reading Black romance novels. If you called me on FaceTime, you would find me in the tub, in the bed, waking up from a nap, or laying in the bed reading a romance novel. I would acknowledge the privilege of that, but I did create this life. But at the end of these 3 years, then I sat down and in like a month wrote Real Soft Girl Shit.
Mm.
And so that this is the connection I'm making, that actually taking a break was the wisdom for the work. It gave the information was in the break. The information was in the breath. The information was in the sitting down somewhere. So I give these two extreme examples. I'm not telling you to go on a 3-year hiatus and just read romance novels all day long. I'm not telling you that. I had actually set my life up to where I could afford to kind of have this break. And I say a break. Meanwhile, I had a book come out during that time frame. I had a project. I took some people to Africa. I'm saying I was just in the bed, but largely that's what I was doing. I was just reading Black romance. Which was like also a part of regulating my nervous system after a breakup, and it was just so it's like I'm not telling. I had actually set up my life for that at that point. But prior to that, when I was just little Ebony Janice, in my early 30s, little Ebony Janice. I want to be little Ebony Janice so bad. But when I was just Ebony Janice in my early 30s trying to get it out the mud still, the information for how to make sure that this little side hustle that I had created could actually be prosperous was both in my meditation visualizations, because I visualized Erica Badu posting that bodysuit. She did. Then it was my visualization, my rest and my visualization that gave me this crystal clear information about what to do to solve. So it's difficult for us when we hear this because we are in relationship with productivity, with even with an activism that historically has been, you gotta do like this. It's hard, hard, hard. You gotta march, you gotta beat, you gotta strike, that's the only thing that we can fathom. So when you hear somebody telling you, go take a nap, when you hear somebody telling you, sit down for a minute, when you hear somebody telling you to take a deep breath, even when you hear somebody telling you to show up as your actual self today, it doesn't sound real. Meanwhile, I asked this question, I'm done with this sermon. As hard as you see in these documentaries that she puts out, Beyonce work, can you actually use your fantastic imagination to think about what Beyonce's actual creative process looks like? And again, I'm troubled that she is definitely a Black capitalist and she has access to a particular reality that, we don't necessarily have access to. But I'm using that extreme example to say, possibly one of the most successful artists of our time. And I'm being generous with possibly. Honestly, Beyonce ain't got no peers, but that's a podcast for another episode. But potentially one of the most successful, creative, innovative artists of our times. Do you really believe that she be step 1, step 2, step 3, and go, and go, and go all day long. I don't believe it. I believe very likely 95%. I have in my spiritual imagination believe that 95% of Beyonce's creative process is thinking and dreaming and imagining. Factually, she probably got a meditation coach. She probably got somebody that do visualizations with her. She probably be doing yoga. She probably be live in downward dog. She probably, wakes up to chimes and you know what I'm saying? Like,
She be,
so
like, on the yachts, like, we see
honestly,
it
we
happening, like,
see it
we
in
get
real time.
excited when
Mhm.
she has the laptop out because 'cause we're
The
like, "Oh, she
laptop
working."
She got the laptop with her okay, something's happening, right? And so
Right.
again, I understand the extreme of the example of 3 years of reading romance novels. I understand the extreme of the example of, Beyoncé with all this access to capital and resources. But I also try to use this example of Ebony Janice, trying to get it out the mud, using breath, using rest, using visualization to say what could make this a smarter process? That the information is there. I will say it is spirit. I will say it is the divine. I will say it's actually resting, dreaming, visualization gives me access to myself, to the information that's already there for me. I will say that. But also, it is evidence. It is proof. I am proving to you because I have used that tool time and time again to create the reality that I currently live in, where I could take 3 years to be laying in the bed being pitiful, reading romance novels. And it was what built that was not it was definitely I was working, I'm doing quote fingers for those that are just listening to this. I was working hard, but I was not working hard. I was using my spirit tools to co-create a reality that was much more spacious for me. Because what I get to create from here is drastically different than what I get to create from my armor.
Am I
You froze again.
frozen? Yeah, no, so there's a lot that you are saying here that I wanna make sure that we are holding on to. So the first thing I remember that you were, reminding us, right, is that we are inherently great and genius on our own, and so we don't need to have the standard, this or the white man in this case, for example, like, be what we are aspiring to. Like, that should not be our bar. We actually need, if that is what we are aspiring to, then we need to put that on the floor, right?
Yeah.
And like lean in. And so when you were describing that, it made me think so much about Audre Lorde and how she's like, the master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house, right? So why even pick them up in the first place? Like, we're not going to create something anew that's better for us with the very things that they have already shaped that are
Mhm.
creating more harm and exclusion. But also, when I teach my students, in the different classes that I teach, whether it's about Black feminism, Black girlhood, a lot of it is trying to push them to dream and imagine a world otherwise. And I find that
Mhm.
they are very challenged by that because it's one of few classes that actually asks them to do that. But also, I'm asking them to just put to the side the grades, put to the side like I got to do this assignment, like just come here to learn and sit and think. And I'm like, you are trying to get this degree, right, to have a seat at the table. What if we actually flip that table upside down? And then I'm
Mhm.
not asking you to create a new table. I'm
Yeah.
asking you to now open up space to dream otherwise, to imagine otherwise, what actually might be something that is more is actually greater for all of us. And then on the other side of that, what I hear you talking about is this exhale moment again, and the like the knowledge and the beauty is actually in the break. It's actually in the breath. It's actually in those still moments. And so I feel so called to that because productivity is definitely our biggest enemy. And at the same time, I think taking a moment, like taking a step back. I've actually heard you talk about this on the Decolonizing Therapy podcast, where you're like, everyone benefits from Black women's wellness because look at actually what we've been creating from our clenched moments or our
Yeah.
anxieties, right? And so I think this is powerful because you're giving us a new way to imagine this other world building or this new imagination in our break, in our breath through our physical, mental, and emotional, but not asking us to take on new labor in the break, but actually inviting other folks to do the work too. So it's okay that we say no and not feel any level of guilt, right? We actually need to be able to regulate, to sustain, to take the nap. And so I'm really grateful for that message because I've always misinterpreted those moments thinking about activism, right? Misinterpreted like we got to keep fighting, we got to keep winning, as like, okay, maybe it's not a protest, it's a different direct action. Maybe it's in the writing, maybe it's in the this, maybe it's in the that. But it's the
Yeah.
constant trying to do that is honestly structured to wear us out, right? And so maybe it's in the sitting and building and making space for ourselves that I think is so powerful. And it's real soft girl shit, right? Like that's
Mhm.
what you are pushing us
Yeah.
into. And so I'm so grateful for that. And I think that's a great piece of advice for the listeners to really sit with, like honestly, truly. Um yeah, so I could talk to you all day, Ebony Janice. So much of what you have said has now developed probably 85 more questions for me. So I hope to like talk to you some more because this has
Yeah.
been real healing in a lot of ways for me too. And so I'm really so grateful. I do want to prepare in our ends. First, I want to come back to younger Ebony Janice, who that you are actually still holding on to as well. And if you could speak to her, if she is witnessing you as this woman that you would become today to do the work that you are doing, how do you think she would feel? If there is there something that she might say to you? Or on the flip side of that, what is something that you might say to her?
Um, Yikes, this question is actually really emotional. I think from both directions. Um, I think little Ebony Janice is the bravest person I know. Like, my God, that little girl just used to be up to stuff. And so I think that she would tell me to dig deeper into what is what is the braver thing. Even in this moment in my life where I think I'm doing really important work for myself and for others, is there something even more brave that I could imagine? And I think that's such a gorgeous question because little Ebony Janice, I was kind of bad too. I like bad kids though. I was just up to stuff. I had like experiments to do. I had stuff to do. And so I love to think about brave little Ebony Janice trying to invent things and, create things. And what I would say to little Ebony Janice is thank you. I feel so deeply grateful for everything that she created for us. And what a beautiful experience to be in relationship with her. Um, and when I think about little Ebony Janice, I still call myself a young lady, which tickles me sometimes after I hear it. I'll be like, because as a young lady, and then I'll be like, girl, you are 43. Like when my mom was 43, my mom had grandchildren. So I like really could be somebody's grandma, honestly. I am not. Uh, but so little Ebony Janice is like, last year me too. Like 3 years ago me, 10 years ago me. It's not just 8-year-old Ebony Janice. It's not just 3-year-old Ebony Janice, right? So I feel so grateful for the beautiful life that we have been co-creating. And so I would just probably just say thank you to little Ebony Janice because, we could have gave up, but we didn't.
Yes, I love that. Expressing gratitude to yourself, to your younger self. I'm
Yeah.
gonna also say thank you to younger Ebony Janice for
Okay.
because without her, we wouldn't be here today. So I just want to
My
say thank
baby.
you. Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Thank
Okay, so
you.
now we're about to wrap up. I'm curious, what are you working on right now? When can folks expect um the real soft girl shit book? Anything that's exciting in your current work that you got going on?
Um, I don't know when people can actually expect real soft girl shit. It was originally slated to be coming out in fall of this year. I don't know that that's a reality anymore because I'm just in some shifts with my publishing, um, with my publisher. But it's coming. Even if I just gotta be like, ain't no book, but we gonna do some talks, whatever. But the book is written, it's so good, honestly, and I'm not even saying that from a place of arrogance. I was rereading it recently and I was like, "Girl, who wrote this? This so good." I can't wait for everybody to get the chance to read it. Um, and what am I currently working on that feels exciting to me? I'm actually, I have this, project called A Return to God. And, it's not really a project, but it's an offering that I've actually only opened up to 3 women a year, and, um and it is working with me one-on-one and really kind of like a priestess portal, you know, where we're really diving deeply into becoming who is actual you, really, really, really doing the work of like creating ritual and daily intention and deep diving into what that looks like. And I have this personal project called the EbonyJanice Project. And so I share the EbonyJanice Project in the like, let's say, that you wanted to build the Ashley Project. The Ashley Project is this we're finding what your life question is. And so for me, at the time of building the Ebony Janice project, my life question was, who would I be if I radically loved myself? And then I built an entire curriculum for my life around who I would be if I radically loved myself. So we spend kind of a year together building this project for you so that in this lifetime, because that I know of, this is the only one that we are getting. In this lifetime, I think the only purpose of your life is to become actual you. There is no other point. Life is like a blade of grass. It's here one moment, it's gone the next. It's so fast, but it's so brief, but it's so long at the same time. And so, what is the point of your life other than being actual you? What is the actual point? So, I'm working very deeply through a return to God with this. So that's kind of exciting for me right now to be launching that and to be sharing that with the world. And I'm dreaming and I'm still reading romance novels and I am yeah, just I'm moving back to New Orleans soon, and I'm just probably gonna get blacker and more ridiculous, and that's where I am on this journey.
Yeah, love all of that. 100%. Where can folks go to learn more about your work or to stay connected with you?
I'm at Ebony Janice everywhere. My name is Ebony Janice. I go by Ebony Janice, which means that you should call me Ebony Janice. And if you're ever looking for me, just look up Ebony Janice, and you'll land somewhere on me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ebony Janice. This has been just such a fulfilling and healing and beautiful conversation. And so I am just really, really, really so grateful. I think I want to return to the question that I posed actually at the top of the episode as well, too, when I brought in Savannah's story to this space. And that question was, what would a revolution that does not cost us our whole spirit, soul, and bodies look like? And who would we be able to be if we didn't have to create from a place of resistance? And I think what you have showed us today is that we have to first start with that deep inhale
Mm,
and the exhale and just sit with that. And so I'm so grateful. Thank you so, so very
yes,
much, Ebony
thank
Janice.
you.
This has been
Thank you. Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much to everyone for listening today to today's episode of the Rolling Archives podcast. I also want to mention that today is just a really special day. It is the anniversary of my grandmother's passing. And so I am holding her with us. She has been a deep inspiration for this entire project. And so I would be remiss to not also mention her and bring her into this space. And so I know that she's here. I know that she's watching. She's literally over my shoulder. There's a photo of her behind me. And so I love you, Grandma Princess. And just thank you for allowing me to always having a soft place to land with you. You can
Appreciate.
find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Rolling Archives, all one word. And then also on our site, therollingarchives.org. Please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe. Also, like and share for YouTube. And we'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks. Until then, may we keep rolling towards all the places that keep us whole and also keep rolling towards real soft girl shit. All right. Bye, y'all.